Next, we're looking at example 2. It says divide segment AB into 4 congruent segments. So we just divided CD into 2 congruent segments. Now we're going to take this line and divide it into 4 congruent segments. So if we think about that for a second, we can just draw a little diagram off to the side. We have AB right now, and we know that we can split it up into 2 congruent segments using a midpoint, such as M. But from there, I need to cut it into 4 total equal parts. So think about that for a second. I have 2 equal parts right now. I need a total of 4 equal parts. Shouldn't we just divide this part and this part in half again? And then we have 1, 2, 3, 4 equal parts. So we'll say maybe call this midpoint C and this midpoint D. And now we're going to construct that. Notice that I just used these hash marks here, these little tick marks. Those are showing me that each of these pieces are congruent. I could have also done the same thing up here. CM is congruent to DM. Okay, back down to example 2. Divide segment AB into 4 congruent segments. So we're going to start, pick up our compass, put it on A. Center on A. Now remember, if you try to put your radius anything less than halfway or equal to halfway, your arcs are not going to cross like they did up here. I'll show you using pencil real quick what I'm talking about, and then we'll actually get to the construction. So say that I'm doing the perpendicular bisector of AB. And I'm going to choose to put my first radius here. I'm going to switch. Again, you're not doing this right now, you're just looking at the video. And I keep the same radius and shoot. I can't put the line through them because they don't cross each other, like I have points A and B on example 1. If I did it right at halfway, which who knows what halfway is because you can't use the ruler, then they would just hit each other at one point on segment AB. So you really need to make sure that your radius is more than halfway. That's why I always shoot for like 3/4 of the way. I don't know what 3/4 is. I'm just making a guess. Because again, we can't use the ruler. We don't get to measure. Swing above, swing below. Now, depending on where you put your radius, your arcs may be as big as mine, bigger than mine, or smaller than mine. It doesn't make that much of a difference as long as they cross twice. So then I'm going to connect through, cap it with arrows, and call this first midpoint M. Now from here, we have to take AM and cut it in half. We have to take BM and cut it in half. We know a construction that cuts things into half, perpendicular bisector. So we're going to do that 2 more times. At this point, you can pause the video and try this on your own, and then come back and hit play again so that you can see the construction. I'm just going to continue following through with the construction as you guys work so that you can take a look at the video as you're working if you choose to. So again, right now I'm cutting AM in half. If you need to pause the video for more time, then, pause the video. Otherwise, your construction should look like this, where we have 3 total perpendicular bisectors because we cut segments into half 3 times. So from here, I can make some conclusions, kind of like what we did up here. We now know that segment AC is congruent to segment CM, which is congruent to segment MD, which is congruent to segment DB. You'll notice in green highlighter, I put those little hash marks on there to show that they're all congruent. Now I'm just going to write a little statement. So, AC is congruent to CM, which is congruent to MD. Notice I'm making one big long chain. Because they're all congruent to one another, you're allowed to do this. The first one's congruent to the second, which is also congruent to the third, which is therefore congruent to DB. Now we could also conclude that there are some right angles here. You can put those little boxes in if you choose to. It's a good idea to just start getting in the habit of indicating when and where you have right angles. And once you're good with that, we're going to take a look at the backside before we move on to practice for today. So the backside says to summarize each step in the perpendicular bisector construction, like what we did in example 1, and explain why each step is necessary. Oh, my cat's pushing on the little iPad here. Okay, so summarizing each step to make the original perpendicular bisector. Okay. Sorry about that. So we have step 1. Place the center point on C. And open radius to more than halfway of segment CD. And this is so that we have arcs that intersect one another. Now, if it were me, I would go through here and highlight the super duper important piece of information. Open the radius to more than halfway of CD. So once we swung that first smiley arc, the first huge arc here, the next step was to put our compass center on D and swing the same arc on the other side. So we have arcs that intersect one another. Swing, a smiley arc, above and below, CD. So we end with 2 intersection points. To me, something important that would need to be highlighted for my personal use would be that smiley arc needs to be above and below. So then step 3, place center on D, keep the same radius, and in parentheses I'm just going to say so we can find the midpoint. And swing a smiley arc above and below. Creating intersection points A and B. So I'm going to reread step 3, think about what I want to highlight. You might highlight the same thing as me, you might highlight something different. I chose to highlight or underline keep the same radius and swing a smiley arc above and below. Once we have points A and B, those intersection points above and below the line, then we just connect. Connect through points A and B. Creating the perpendicular line. Notice I use this symbol for perpendicular again. The perpendicular line. And in parentheses I'm going to say with arrows. And the midpoint M, where AB and CD intersect. Another word for intersect, if you're not familiar with that, is just cross, where AB and CD cross each other. Now I do want to make a little comment down here after highlighting my important information in step 4. To me, that's connect. Down here, I just want to talk about dividing into 4 congruent segments. We did it, but we're not writing the steps for it, which is fine, but I just want to write a little key note here. To divide into 4 congruent segments, cut given segment in half, and then cut each half into half. And in parentheses, I'm just going to say 3 perpendicular bisectors. Now remember, when you're going through these videos, you can pause them, you can rewind them, you can do whatever you need to do to help yourself be successful. But you want to make sure that you're taking down the important part of the notes, and then later you'll go back and summarize what you learned in this particular skill lesson. And remember to use highlighters, annotate, write important questions or big ideas off to the left-hand side, just as we did with those vocab words at the beginning. All right, see you later.